If everybody's ready, I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. It is 9:01 by my clock, January 7th, 2026. And this is the Water Allocation Committee. Good morning, everybody. New face up here. I thought I would start by thanking JD, who's not here, Commissioner Solomon, for asking me to take this. I think I want to thank him for that. I think time will tell maybe, but I appreciate the vote of confidence, if nothing else. I'd also like to thank Commissioner Smith for stepping in over the last few meetings to when Commissioner Weiss, her appointment ran out. And I would like to thank them both for, I think, setting a really good example for me to attempt to follow. So appreciate that. And I've got good help up here with Vice Chair Wright and Council Young. So, all right, with that, we'll go ahead and do our first item here is the notice in North Carolina General Statute 138A-15. That statute mandates that at the beginning of any meeting of a board, the chair shall remind all members of their duty to avoid conflicts of interest under this subchapter. The chair also shall inquire as to whether there is any known conflict of interest with respect to any matters coming before the board at the time, or this committee at this time. All right, I see none. We'll move to the approval of the minutes. We've got two sets of minutes, September 2025 and November 2025. Let's take them one by one. Anybody have any comments on the September 2025 minutes? Okay, I had some last meeting. They got addressed. Thank you to whoever handled that. I'll take a motion to approve those meetings. So moved.
I'll second.
Commissioner Hardison moved. Commissioner Smith seconded. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. All right, November 12th, 2025 minutes. Any comments, corrections? Nope, seeing none. I'll take a motion on those. Commissioner Hardison again, second.
Second.
Commissioner Orme Zavaleta. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. All right, thank you all. All right, our just information items today. I don't believe we have any action items. Our first item will be dam safety rules review and a readoption. I believe Jacob Smith, you here? You'd like to come on up?
So I'll introduce myself. I'm obviously not Toby, but I've been told I have a very similar gift of the gab, so I'll try not to carry on too much. But I'm here, Jacob Smith. I've been with dam safety the last 4, coming up on 5 years. My primary focus has been diving into jurisdictional determinations and hazard classifications with respect to all of the dams across the state, both old and new. Whether or not they are something that we need to worry about under our jurisdiction, and if they are, what classification do they warrant? Is it a high hazard structure, intermediate hazard structure, or a low hazard structure? So I've got a little bit of nuance that I've gained with interpreting the law, and so I hope to give and share some of that nuance with you guys and what we have achieved in our dam safety program with respect to these rules. So today I'm going to go over just a couple of items, a couple of examples that sort of get the point across as far as what our motive has been and what we're trying to do. We're going to go over a couple of general provisions, and we're going to touch on something regarding the obtaining approval for dam constructions, repair, or removal. And I'm going to give you 4 examples on the next couple of slides. First thing I'm going to show and demonstrate is our schedule, where we are currently. By the arrow, we are right on time. We've gone through the stakeholder consultations, and we've drafted some language. We've worked with outside consultants. We've bounced it back and forth, many months of meeting with them. And very recently, we've started diving deep into the fiscal note drafting, and I'll touch on that at the end of this as far as where we are in that and what we're kind of seeing at the moment. So we've still got a ways to go. Right now, we're at January 26th, and obviously we have until, or our objective deadline is January 27th. So another year from now. So first example we have here, really proposed amendments. What I really want to point out is from the top down viewpoint. What we're trying to do is we're really just trying to modernize terminology and references. We're obviously trying to refine, as I've said, the hazard classification and the nuances tied into that. We want to strengthen some of those engineering and design standards that have already existed by practice. They've just not been in rule and easily understood. And we want to improve clarity, right? We want to make it clear to not only the consultant and the engineer who are doing the work, but we oftentimes, I've learned in this jurisdictional determination process, we forget about the owner and we don't give them enough time to understand what it all means. And so, for example, owner, right? That is a very hotly contested item in dam safety. We always get questions of who's an owner? Am I an owner? What does it mean to be an owner? And so what we've gone in and we've changed the old and the new there, and I'll leave that for your reading. But basically, what we're trying to do is it just reflects what we've done with all of our rules thus far. We've tried to modernize and clarify, right? Creating additional accountability to the engineers who submit these things to us on a week-to-week, day-to-day basis. And we've applied this throughout the rules, the same mindset, the same idea. So first example I want to give is the one that's true and blue to me, is the classification of dams. This is something that is very fickle. There is a lot of nuance. There is obviously a high hazard structure, impacts to properties, homes, downstream, people at risk would warrant a high hazard structure. We all can agree with that. Then there's low hazard structure. Well, it doesn't really impact anything. There's really nothing downstream. There might be some farmland. It runs into the woodlands and hits an existing floodplain. Where it gets a little bit more nuanced, as you can imagine, is that Class B interpretation, right? And all we've really done is try to introduce some new tiered quantifiers to help identify where you might best fall, to try and eliminate some of that ambiguity from reviewer to reviewer to reviewer by adding these tiers and these volume categories and these updates to, for example, an secondary railroad to an active railroad, right? What is a secondary railroad versus what is an active railroad with respect to how we are concerned to impacts, right? We just want to know, is that active structure going to be impacted should the dam fail and influence it? And the goal here is all to just ensure that the classifications reflect accurate consequences and we can improve in predictability for owners and consultants when they submit. So they're not just blindly saying, I think my dam maybe is a Class B, or I think my dam is a Class A. Well, now we've, so to speak, we've given them a recipe. We've shown all of the ingredients. We've laid all of the ingredients out. Now they need to just put everything together and bake it into one submittal, right? So to move on, a couple of other examples. This is my second example we're going to give. So as-built plans. So everything highlighted is new, right? And it looks like a lot. It is, wow, they're adding a lot here. But when you look at what existed, we've just broken down and more clearly defined the 2 complete sets of as-built plans shall be submitted, right? What we've done here through B and C, we have expanded upon that and added some clarification. What is that? How do we submit that? What are the ingredients to making this perfect pie, right? And so again, we've just added the need for supporting documents, engineering certifications, things that have been in practice provided to us for years and years, but by rule have not been very clearly defined. Again, professional engineering requirements. This is another one where we are adding some additional rule and quantifiers and clarifiers with respect to dam safety specifically and the professional engineering requirements expected of a dam professional, pardon me. What we want to look at is we have this, it was made aware to us during the rules review. There was this loophole or this, not loophole, but there was this rule or this statute that allowed for very broad exemptions from engineers who wanted to submit to dam safety. So presume that you have a structure, the engineer giving professional engineering experience would be allowed to, under this general statute, submit to us and propose a hazard classification And we would have no opportunity to really review that, given that they have professional engineering experience that should warrant the classification requested. There was never really any understanding with respect to what does it mean to have dam specific engineering experience, right? If you've just graduated and you've never worked on a dam before, we might want to see some things that you have achieved as far as dam related experience before you can really lean into this rule, right? Let's, for example, the first one here, 5 or more certificates of approval, right? By nature of obtaining a certificate of approval, you have indicated to us you've gone through the process from top to bottom and you've done it without issue. And so next time after that 5th one or whatever it may be, you submit, you indicate what you want to have as your classification, and the process can move so much more quickly, so much more streamlined. We don't have to go through the rigmarole of investigate here. We know and can trust that this engineer has done their due diligence and can support their argument justly.
Jerry.
And then finally, I just want to, yes,
Sorry, could I ask a question on that slide?
please.
Does that set up I understand the intent of that change, but does that set up a standard that makes it impossible for a young engineer to get qualified? Because to submit, you have to have 5 certifications approved, but to get them approved, to submit them for approval, you have to have 5 approved.
So the way that it would work in the dam safety program, you may still submit for a jurisdictional determination. You may still operate and submit these items to dam safety to lean into this specific general statute, though, as it pertains to B, subsection B here, you would have to demonstrate all of those quantifiers, right? That is not to say that you cannot submit for a as-built or for a construction of a dam. That is just to say that that will go into your bucket of demonstrated experience, right?
Because this clause falls under the dams that are exempt, correct? So if they're
Correct.
not exempt, you could work through the process.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, yeah. It is, and that is a point that our stakeholders brought up that is a bit confusing. And I will admit, we have room to operate and work on the language here, but the intent is true. And we are just trying to ensure that we don't have a misclassification of a high hazard dam as a low hazard structure from an engineer who may have no dam experience. And lo and behold, we have a failure down the road and we have impacts. And unfortunately, it leaves people at risk if we didn't get to have a say in that review or review that engineer's credentials, right?
Chair Solomon, did you have a question?
Commissioner Smith.
Commissioner Smith, sorry, I didn't see you.
So one follow-up
Yes.
on that, it would be good if you haven't done it already to make sure you talk to the general counsel's office or the AG's office, because there have been these issues in the past where rules have been struck down because they add professional requirements that are not actually part of the professional licensing process. So generally, if you're an engineer and you have your license, state agencies can't add requirements. Now, I understand what you're doing is clarifying language in an existing statute, which is something. So I would just say we probably need to be sure we've got that nailed down before we find ourselves in the Rules Review Commission with an objection that we can't add requirements to a professional licensing.
Yes, ma'am. And we did run this through our general counsel during the meetings, and they had a very similar understanding that it could have ruffle some feathers, but tying it into the general statute specifically, we are not trying to define what it is to be a professional engineer. We are just trying to define what it is to utilize this specific statute. And that's where, and it is a bit of nuance in that it's getting that language interpreted through these couple of rules. So yes, I agree. We need to nail that down. Yes.
Chair Solomon.
Yep, and I would agree with Commissioner Smith, but just I'm ad hoc, but the other professional engineer in the room right here, or licensed professional. Oh, okay, missed one then. 3, but But to the topic here
Mhm.
is, again, in general, our rule, well, the question is, have you talked to NC Bells about this? The Board of Engineers and Land Surveyors?
No, sir.
Okay, I'd recommend you do that because they've been through the battles that Commissioner Smith and I have been through in the past on these things. We're trying to do that in rules. I do think there's a problem here because you can't ask a licensed professional just to have so many, if they're electrical people, can only work on industrial projects. It's the NC Bell that has to evaluate the qualifications of the licensed professional. It's Attorney General that does, people that act like engineers but aren't licensed. So I think this creates a little bit of problem, both maybe in rule that we can't endorse a profession and maybe that we don't have we don't possess the jurisdiction over licensed professional engineers as a commission. The other part previously, well, right here, legally qualified engineer. I mean, qualified engineer could be somebody, again, this is a licensing question, licensed in New Jersey.
Yeah.
You don't want that. I mean,
No.
I think the word needs to be licensed,
So-
North Carolina licensed.
In prior, and we didn't point it out here, but we did
California.
we did clarify that it
Alabama.
needs to be a North Carolina specific.
Like in the-
We didn't
licensed
specify it right here, but it
engineer.
needs to be North Carolina. Yes, sir. Yes,
Yeah,
sir. Because we agree totally.
Yeah.
You don't want someone who's never worked in North Carolina with a dam ever to try and.
well, legally, they can't
Yeah.
practice here if they don't have.
I believe the term
licensing.
qualified engineer is defined now, right? In the rule.
I'm sorry.
I think the term qualified engineer is defined in the rule now.
Well,
Isn't that one of the definitions?
I'm not sure if it's defined in our rules specifically. I'll check back. It may be.
It may be, I may be wrong, but we just have fought this battle before, so.
Yeah.
The other thing I would go back and just with NC Bell's
Mhm.
Board of Engineering and Land Surveyors is to check on the certification
Yes.
requirements.
Yes,
Because
sir.
we do that, but engineers typically don't certify things.
No, that's a great
So
recommendation.
that
Yeah,
needs
we'll
to be
check on
looked at
that.
again.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great advice.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Yeah, well, I just want to give you guys one final point here on the fiscal impact and where we are, right? This is where that arrow at the top, where we currently sit and stand. So at the moment, we are expecting moderate compliance cost anticipated for the regulated community. We're expecting benefits of improved safety, clearer rules, and reduced risk, right? And that's ultimately, that's the driver here. We're dam safety, right? We're motivated by safety downstream, and that's all we're trying to do by implementing these updated rules is improve clarity, safety, and clarity. Yeah, clarity. I said it twice. So finally, as I've indicated, balancing safety improvements with reasonable compliance cost is one of our primary objectives. We are not trying to rewrite the book. We are not trying to create undue cost to anyone. We're just trying to make it more clear to everyone involved, from the engineer who's bidding the project to the owner who's trying to find the engineer, what to expect, right? That's all we've tried to achieve here. And so with that, we've sort of opened up to questions already. But if you have any more, feel free to shoot me an email or give me, yes, what you got?
So I've got several and some
Please.
of this just for my own education, because I'm not an engineer and I don't play one on TV.
I understand.
So one question that's been in the news recently. So the recent American Geophysical Union conference, there was a postdoc out of Virginia Tech who reported this study where they were using satellite imagery
Mhm.
and looked at the integrity of dams
Yep.
across the country, Puerto Rico, and found that they were sinking. Have you, has there been any kind of analysis looking at that kind of technology to do an evaluation of the integrity of?
Yeah, absolutely. We're in the midst of one right now. Yeah, I'm glad you asked. Yeah, I've gotten to manage a very fun project with NEMAC, UNC Asheville. We've gotten to work with them on a project where we are using satellite imagery at a very high level to identify things downstream, basically identifying change detection. So if it's seen a lot of growth or impact, say where there was farmland 5 years ago has recently been redeveloped into townhomes, this tool would flash that, would give us a flashing red light, right? So that we could send our field investigators out, get some confirmation on the ground, and see whether or not we need to take a closer look to that specific dam with respect to what its standards of safety are currently being considered as.
Okay. On classification, it didn't jump out in your language, but does the construction, the materials used to construct the dam factor into how you classify? So whether it's earthen, whether it's, concrete or other constructed materials?
They influence it in the sense of they influence the overall hydrology of the system. And so when we talk about dams and
And
we
I'm
talk.
thinking dam integrity, not hydrology, but dam integrity.
Mhm. And so with respect to integrity, that falls out of the jurisdictional determination point. At that point, we are just looking at what has been proposed as the dam should either be standing new, or if it is a current dam and they want to modify it and bring it up to some sort of standard, they'll do all of the modeling in the softwares that they have. They'll spit us out results. And then once we confirm or deny or agree with those results, we'll classify it accordingly. And then if it is something that falls under our jurisdiction, it will go through our review engineer process where they will identify items like structural integrity to indicate whether or not they need to update or modify or get something different in accordance with safety.
Yeah, so I guess I'm not really understanding then if that factors into how you classify a dam.
So so classification is strictly motivated by if we fill the dam up. This is a very filtered down view here. If we fill the dam up as if it were a bathtub, we fill it up with water and we break a wall on that bathtub, where does that water go? Right?
But you're not thinking about what the bathtub is made of.
Not until
It's
once it gets to the
vulnerability to a break in the wall.
No, yes, we are. Yeah.
Okay.
Once it gets to the engineering, once we get through the process of determining whether or not that is something that should be jurisdictional, we will then move it to the engineer review process, at which point it is on rails and they'll go through with our engineers and see, this meets criteria, this doesn't, right? Let's make sure this does meet a standard of safety. And I think to your point, if it doesn't meet that standard of safety, but it doesn't appear to fall jurisdictional, how we're worried that maybe it's not being built up to standard? Well, by way of falling exempt from our classification, that would indicate that hazard does not exist. And so even if they unfortunately did build a dam to less standard, if some fella grabbed a backhoe and pushed a bunch of dirt in an area, if the impacts don't exist, the jurisdictional status would not be there. We just are concerned with the impacts. And so even if it's not great structure, we do have to see if there are impacts first.
Okay. And then one last question,
Yeah.
Chair, if that's okay. On ownership,
Yes.
does ownership also include those who financed the construction and those who are responsible for operations and maintenance of the costs?
That's a great question. Typically, traditionally, ownership has been a split and equal cost to everyone that has a stake in the dam, right? And that at that point, by way of law, that's how it's sort of interpreted, right? If somebody on the other side, if owners disagree with that equal split, that is beyond the realm of dam safety. We're not in the business of ownership disputes. We are in the business of interpreting the definition of owner and letting owners determine how best it applied to them, right?
So that interpretation of owner would then include, the bank or group that financed the construction and then the entity that's responsible for the care and maintenance.
Mhm. Yeah, unless they chose to argue that it wasn't, right? If an HOA decided to say that we're actually going to maintain and operate this dam and we've got our own folks that we want to have do it, they could submit for that. We would just have to agree with, right?
Any other questions? Commissioner Smith?
Sort of a follow-up on that. In going through these rules for readoption, did you come across any other things that may need to be clarified, particularly with respect to dams, small dams in residential communities? Because I know we've had a number of issues, and it goes back in part to the ownership question, where subdivisions have been created around a lake that was artificially built by dam construction. And then the developer's gone away.
Mhm.
And the homeowners association is technically that they are the owners and they are responsible for maintenance.
Mhm.
they often have no idea
Yeah.
that they are and have no idea what to do about it. And I've seen those issues come up a number of times before. So have you looked at whether there are any ways to improve that situation? And I don't know whether it's additional notice, education. I don't know what would fix it exactly,
Yeah.
but we do have a number of those dams all over North Carolina, and they have been a thorny problem because it's been left to the responsibility of a small community organization that's really not built to deal with it.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. That's a common issue we run into all the time, right? And it is something we're trying to help clarify and make more clear. Unfortunately, based off of what we have right now, there's not much more we can do beyond what you've sort of indicated as increasing that educational awareness and outreach. A lot of times, I think in other, I want to say Virginia, I'm not positive, but in certain other states, when a property is turned over, they have a requirement to disclose that there is a dam that is a hazard it is jurisdictional to the state. I don't know that that requirement exists in North Carolina at this point. They don't have to disclose that. We get left with a lot of people who just buy this property and they're suddenly, they get a letter and they find out, oh, I'm jurisdiction. What is, I thought this was just a stormwater pond. Right now, education and outreach is our best weapon to get that.
Mr. Jaspers.
Just a quick follow-up question, just for my own clarification. How were the numbers for major, minor, and medium economic impact derived?
Yes. So we've had in practice numbers that were half that for the last 10, 15 years in policy, right? So policy, shake a stick at it. What we've wanted to do is try and, with the times, update and double all of those amounts that have traditionally been utilized to give some guidance for the owners and engineers submitting. And so that is to say, if they tick over, if the economic bound is 60,000 and they tick over to 60,001, does that mean they're automatically out of jurisdiction or jurisdictional high rather than jurisdictional intermediate? No, that is one piece of the pie, right? Like I've said, we have a bunch of ingredients that go into this pie that give us a full picture. The economic impacts are meant to help guide folks with respect to how that ingredient may taste with respect to the rest of the pie. If the argument still exists that there are no impacts downstream, there are no economic, or there are no impacts to roadways or homes or properties or parks, well then, because you're at 60,001, everything else indicate that you are not high hazard. And that ultimately comes back to the review engineer refers back to the director for concurrence and approval. And the director has, in our program, the director signs off and agrees with all of the dam safety recommended hazard classifications, right? And that is to say, if they don't agree with, they don't agree with, and we request additional information from the applicant through a revision request letter to try and get additional information to satisfy what the director would need to meet what you have requested as low, intermediate, or high.
Chair Solomon.
Yeah, I want to follow on with that because I had it as a note too. Can you go back to your slides 3 or 4 pieces ago
This one,
where you added the word moderate in there? Because it
This
threw
one,
the
yes, sir.
flag off
Yep.
to me.
Think so, yeah.
Where is it? It's right there somewhere.
Economic impact tiers of medium
Under
volume.
2, line 4, you're adding cause moderate economic impact. So we're
Mhm.
doing the request would be to the chair would be to have us look into that, maybe with RRC or our other rules. Because we're taking a policy from the dam safety folks and now putting it in a rule.
Yeah.
The definition of moderate economic impact
Yeah.
has to be defined. I think RRC will ask it, but I also think when we look at our standard definitions across the board,
Mhm.
that may not what we want to do in coal ash evaluations or other things. I just think we need to be careful what we call moderate economic impact since it's going from policy to rule.
Yes, sir. We've had a lot of, and that's one that, a lot of our outside consultants, we had a lot of back and forth, and we're still working on this. This is something, as you pointed out, it's hard to nail this down, you know?
And I agree with you, and I think you have a very specific need within dam
Yeah.
safety, but when you put it in rule, it goes kind of
Yeah.
across the board.
Understood.
And I'm more worried across the board
Yeah.
when we throw the term in there.
No, that's a good point, and we need to consider that for sure, and I appreciate that. That's good advice.
That's good. And I was following the same concern.
Where did you say you all are with the RIA and OSBM?
We're currently in the midst of the fiscal impact analysis, so we're right.
Preparing to submit or having some?
So we have not submitted, we are preparing to submit. Yeah, we are working with our team and we're trying to get some general high-level numbers that we're confident in that we can submit.
Okay. And OSBM review typically takes how long?
60 days, 60
60
days.
days, okay. Okay. Just looking at that March timeframe for the.
Yeah, that's,
I think it's required. I mean, in the APA, it's 60 days. I
It's
think
2
we have to
weeks.
have a
Okay.
response back.
2 weeks. 14 days.
Okay, so
Okay.
2 weeks seems
Okay.
to be the consensus. Okay, okay. Any other questions for Mr. Smith? All right, thank you, sir.
I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next on our agenda, we have Harold Brady with an overview of the IBT program. Harold, I think you're good on time, but just watch the clock if you don't mind. Try and keep us on time.
All right. I'm Harold Brady. I work in water supply planning. I'm the water supply development coordinator. Thank you for letting me speak to you today, providing an interbasin transfer, the primer for this. This is really just a background information for the program. I've got about 15 years now in the space of interbasin transfers. Yeah. So here's a quick outline of what I'm going to go through. In this presentation, I generally provide this presentation, many of these slides at the public hearings, public meetings that we have. So a lot of these same slides you're seeing are the slides that the public sees. And as I go through these, if you have any questions, it's probably good to just ask the questions as we run through it. So we're going to go through the basics, some statutes. Before we jump into it, some mapping questions, what the existing transfers are, history. And then as time allows, we'll get into some examples. The examples could take some time, so we may not have time for that today. Okay, so by statute, an interbasin transfer is the withdrawal of surface water and moving that surface water from one river basin and discharging that or part of that water into a different river basin. And the purpose is to ensure it's good public policy to move that water from one basin to the other. This is language straight from the statute. And here is from 22L is the statute that we work from. So these are the thresholds that require a certificate. So once an entity is proposing or is transferring 2 million gallons a day based on average day over a maximum month, they're required to, once they exceed that threshold, then they're required to come to the Environmental Management Commission to request a certificate. That is what all of the certificates I've worked on, that's been what has caused them to come to seek a certificate. There is the 3 million gallon max day. Yeah.
One quick clarification that I think I heard in an earlier meeting. So, and this is a permanent transfer. You know, it's something that will continue from day one forward.
That's right. It's based on a certain period. The number that we're looking for, that they're proposing, is based on a certain time period, 30-year planning horizon. But that once the commission allows that to happen, then that's in perpetuity.
So it's no going back.
Well, I mean, the commission does have the ability to reopen. We'll get into that later on, but you're right about that. Once that happens, it's a certificate in perpetuity. They never come back to reauthorize. These other two are in the statute, but really haven't come up yet as things to issue a new certificate when it exceeds 25%. of an existing transfer. And then the third one is increase from, that has to do with a grandfathered or pre-existing condition is that third one. And we have a couple dozen water systems across the state that have a pre-existing authorization. Okay, so stepping back, what exactly is an interbasin transfer? So simply put, it's the withdrawal minus the return. So it's the net and not the gross amount. Here's a couple of examples. Example A, they're using, the town is built right on the basin boundary, which happens quite a bit. You know, it's not in the floodplain. So they're withdrawing, here example, they're withdrawing 10 million gallons a day into the town, into their service area. The service area, because it's divided in half, roughly, it's losing 5 MGD to what we call consumptive loss. So here in the example, 3 is going to what we call the receiving basin. 2 is what we call the source basin. Consumptive losses it's anything that goes into the ground that's not collected by the wastewater collection system. So you can think of washing your car, watering your lawn, septic systems, those type of things. Yes.
One question I have, and I was reading through this, I was thinking about, is there any rule of thumb about the consumptive loss ratio, or is every single one of these different? And like, so water is drawn, what percentage ends up going back? Is it kind of typical, or is it all over the place?
It's very unique on the system itself, because you know, there's a lot of systems across the state that they're designed to where they provide water service, but not sewer service, right? And so they're not really collecting that wastewater in as much as other systems. And you have some larger systems like Raleigh or Winston-Salem or such that they're collecting most of it and is going into a collection system.
Okay.
So that's where that number is going to vary.
Commissioner, or maybe it's Salvatore.
So how does water quality come into play? So is there monitoring or an analysis of the quality of water from the source basin to the receiving water so that you don't trigger any degradation of quality of the receiving basin, for example?
Well, there is some anti-deg language in the interbasin transfer statute to make sure that that's squared away. But
and active monitoring that.
Well, it's active monitoring in that it's discharged through a wastewater treatment plant.
But I'm thinking in terms of the issuing the certificate itself, is there an analysis of A to B to make as part of that certificate process?
In the past, there has not been.
Might be something to think about.
Right.
Mention something related to that. I think the reason it hasn't is because it has relied on the NPDES permitting program to control the quality of the water that's being discharged into the receiving basin. So there hasn't been.
But then are you putting a burden on that process? If you're not knowing what's coming in, you know, then is it an unfair burden that's being placed on?
Yeah, I think that's a good question.
Yeah.
Reasonable question. Thank you. So once you've got the 5 in the consumptive, and the remainder 5 is going to is being discharged through a wastewater treatment plant. In example A, to the receiving basin. The second example is the town has its service area completely within the receiving basin. It withdraws 10 from the source basin, like the first example. It's using 5 consumptively, but now that 5 is entire. That's your basin transfer is the 5. Whereas the first example, the basin transfer is an 8 because you're 5 and 3 going to the receiving basin. And then the second example, they're returning through the wastewater treatment plant back to the source basin. But it's important to remember that this is a net transfer and not the gross. That is a key part of this. Any questions on this one? All right. So I talked a lot about basins. Here's our map of what the the IBT basins look like. This is a map that is in statute. A map in and of itself that's in statute was drawn by the General Assembly in '91. and it follows pretty close to what we refer to as hydrologic unit code, the HUC units, but it's not exact. So I have this, this next slide here shows how closely I layered the two layers on top of each other, to where you can see how there's a little bit of difference. Certainly in the western part of the state, it follows very closely. And in the eastern part of the state, the lines sort of veer off here and there. But for the purposes of issuing a certificate, this is the map we follow.
Chair Solomon.
Well, yeah, and I just want to add, this is one of the things when you talk to other states and they don't have these big interbasin debates, they do it more on a large basin basis, not a small basin. So we have a lot of smaller basins, but we are often asked if you're out of state, well, how's IBT such a big thing in North Carolina? One reason is we regulate it pretty tightly with the boundaries.
And
Commissioner
if I can add something to that, which I was going to add at some point anyway, is the other reason is, I had someone ask me recently, well, why is North Carolina the only state in the country that has an interbasin transfer statute? And we are.
Yep.
And the reason we are is because we're the only state in the country that doesn't have a water allocation permitting program that applies broadly to withdrawals. So most states actually regulate large withdrawals, whether they involve interbasin transfers or not. And we have never had that regulatory infrastructure. We've focused solely on these transfers.
That's good.
Yeah, so building on what you mentioned, Chairman Solomon, we refer to major basins and sub-basins. So there's 38 sub-basins and 17. Thanks, Linwood. 17 major basins. Okay. Okay, just some quick facts here. There's over 130 systems with some type of surface water transfer. So there's a lot of small systems, small communities across North Carolina. A lot of them are built on the ridge. And so just by the nature of building on the ridge, you're going to have a single source usually, if it's a surface water source. And you're going to have some kind of transfer just by the nature of that amount, just by setting it up that way. Most all of those are under 1 million gallon a day. Most of those are under 100,000 gallons a day. So there have been 9 interbasin transfer certificates issued. This topic gets a lot of interest, yet there have only been 9 of these permits issued since this was established in '93. I mentioned before about the pre-existing transfer allowance. That line in the sand was July 1, 1993. So if a water system was already or had the capability, the capacity to transfer a certain amount of water at the time of July 1, '93, they were allowed that amount of water moving forward to transfer. And I mentioned there are a handful of water systems that are transfer water between 1 and 2 million gallons a day, and those systems we try to keep close look at through our local water supply plan program. So here are the 9. I'm just going to quickly roll through these. So the first one was Piedmont Triad. That's Lake Randleman. And then Charlotte Water in '02. Concord Kannapolis in '07. Greenville, that was in 2010. A lot of that came out of the capacity use area in the eastern part of the state. And then my first one, Brunswick County in 2013. Cary and Apex. Cary Apex actually had a certificate that was issued back, their first certificate in '89. It was modified again in '01. And then the most recent modification was in 2015. Actually, I think the '01 was a new certificate because we didn't have a modification program. Anyway. Carr Regional in 2015. Union County in 2017, and the most recent one issued was Pender County in 2018. We currently have 3 we're working through the process right now at various points in the process. My colleague Maya Holcomb will speak to those here in a minute.
So out of curiosity, for the first one, is that what kind of led to establishing the program? Just looking at the time frame from what you just said.
Right. I could see where you think that. I think perhaps they saw, because Cary and Apex already had one that was issued in '89.
Okay.
Perhaps the General Assembly saw that this was an issue that was coming
Yeah.
to bear. The construction of Lake Randleman, Lake Randleman was being proposed, so it was coming on. So perhaps they were trying to get ahead of it.
Yeah.
There was a call for that type of work to be done. Concerns from the public. So maybe this helps to sort of answer a little bit of that question. So it was established, the first statute was established in '91, the Interbasin Transfer Statute. 93 was a big change. That's where it really, 91, it was pretty small. 93 is where it became much more prescriptive how it is now. This is one of the more prescriptive statutes we have in Division of Water Resources anyway, that I'm certainly aware of. So the 93 statute change was major. There was another significant one in 93. That's where it brought in the anti-DEG policy into the statute. 07 was a major change. Some of that came out of the Concord-Kannapolis interbasin transfer. And then in 2013 was another major
change to the statute and changed the statistic. Prior to this statute, it was all done on max day, the maximum day of the year that water would be transferred. And this changed it to the average day over a maximum month, which is easier for water systems to manage and handle and deal with. And I will point out that it is a rare year that there isn't some proposal for a change in the General Assembly for a change to this interbasin transfer statute. Most of the time that change doesn't happen, but a lot of times it does. This past year, there was a change that took the Haul and the Deep, the subbasins for the Haul and the Deep, and now they're part of the Cape Fear. They're merged into the Cape Fear Basin. Okay. The process. And this is sort of, I'm going to walk through a full-blown process. There's 3 steps to it. I say full-blown because there's also a more truncated modification process, and there's also a coastal provision that's a little bit more truncated as well. But going from full-blown new certificate, there are 3 primary steps. There's the notice of intent. That's referred to as the NOI. There's the second step, which is the environmental document. Generally, it's an EIS, but sometimes only an EA is required. And the third step is the petition document. So for that first step, there are 3 public meetings that are held. These are applicant-led meetings. Note I'm saying meetings and not hearings. So this is really more of garnering public input on what the proposal is. There is very little information usually at these because it's very much at the beginning of this process. The second step is that environmental document process. This is where there's at least 1 public hearing that's required. Generally, there's more than 1 public hearing. These public hearings are commission-led public hearings with DEQ staff holding it. So then there's the first 2 pages of the statute go through how all the notices work. It's a huge notice. The one we most recently worked on, we're talking about sending it out to, I think, 45 newspapers, well over 1,000 email addresses it was notified to. So it is notified far and wide. And then as it goes through that process, ultimately the department will issue a record of decision on an EIS, an environmental impact statement. And the commission issues its adequacy determination for the document. Once you get through the second process, then you get to that third step. This is the petition document. I refer to the petition document as a bit more of a little bit more, this is the project we're going to move forward with. Whereas the environmental impact statement or the environmental document is a little more unbiased. We're looking at all these alternatives in a fair, even way and determining which one we think will be the best one moving forward. The petition is, we've already sort of decided where we want to move, and we're petitioning the commission for this alternative. Once the petition document's received, the EMC will issue a draft determination, at which point there are a number of public hearings, at least 2 in the source and receiving basins. Once again, there's often even more than that. And those comments are accepted for at least 30 days before then the EMC will issue a final determination. And that final determination is effectively the certificate. Both in step 2 and step 3, there are hearing officers' reports that help guide the process. All right, I sort of rattled through that. Any questions on that? All right. Okay, so what are your considerations for issuing a certificate, or even in the department working through the environmental document? So first step is the environmental document. It is really it provides most all of the background technical information moving forward with the project. These are usually very large documents. You know, we're talking the body of the document's 200+ pages with all of its appendices. It could be over 600-700 pages long. It defines the purpose and need of the proposed project. It defines and goes through and talks about the alternatives that have been evaluated and the modeling results of those alternatives, and what types of avoidance, minimization, and any mitigation measures that are necessary with this proposed project. The petition allows the applicant to present the technical information, but like I said, in more of this is the preferred way to go. And then the EMC would then can grant a petition. Yep, can grant the petition, the certificate in whole, in part, deny it, or add any mitigation measures that the commission sees necessary. So the EMC has a lot of flexibility here as to what that certificate looks like by statute. But by statute, there are 9 findings of fact that must be considered. And these are very important, and in the public hearings and public meetings, I really try to stress this to the public when they're providing comments, to address your comments in these 9 categories, if you will. So the first one is the purpose and need of the project. The second and third ones have to deal with the source basin, with the second one being the direct impacts to the source basin from this proposed transfer. The third one being indirect impacts from the proposed transfer. The fourth one is both indirect and direct and indirect impacts to the receiving basin. The fifth one is looking at the alternatives involved and if there are any additional alternatives that need to be reviewed. The sixth and seventh one have to do with lakes, impounded storage. So 6 is any impounded storage capacity. If a transfer is involved with using a lake or reservoir. The 7th one specifically deals with Corps of Engineer reservoirs, of which there are 4 across the state. 8 is how does the service area lie within the source and receiving basin? So if you think back to those first 2 examples I gave, is the service area of the water system, all of the certificates are water system related. So does that service area lie within both the source and receiving basin, or is it entirely within the receiving basin? And then the 9th one is any other facts that the commission deems relevant to the discussion. Yes.
Okay. So back to number 1.
Okay.
So does this bring in the requirement under the Clean Water Act of designated use? So for example, if the source water has a certain designated use and the receiving group or its use in that transfer is different from what's already been approved as designated use, how does that come into play?
So are you talking about whether it's classified, there's classification?
So
as like a
say the
water
source
supply?
basin designated use is just fishable, swimmable,
Right.
but the intent in the transfer is for drinkable.
So it would have to be classified for water supply. So that'd be
So there'd be a reconsideration of designated use in that.
right. If it's not already classified for water supply, then it would have to be classified for water supply before any of the withdrawals would occur. All right. Conditions and limitations. These are by statute that are required within each one of these. We have the water conservation plan, a drought management plan, and a compliance and monitoring plan. Quarterly monitoring reports are required. And here's what I mentioned before. There's conditions that allow the ability to reopen and amend, modify a certificate as necessary as we move into the future. The statute compels that because if a new source in the receiving basin presents itself, or if there's information that comes to light that something in the environmental document was incorrect. There's no selling of transferred water to water systems that are not co-applicants. It's important. And then EMC may impose additional conditions and mitigation measures as necessary. I'm going to skip these examples, but I will be glad to offline answer any questions regarding those.
We can have Mr. Brady back for another meeting to go in more detail.
He's enjoying himself.
Oh, yeah.
Those are scars. Those are scars he's talking about.
Thank you, Katie.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Brady. Next, we'll have Maya Holcomb. Quick update on current IBT process. Quick update.
I will try to make this as quick as possible because we have 2 minutes. Hi, my name is Maya Holcomb. I'm the IBT coordinator for the Division of Water Resources, and I'm going to give a really, really brief update. These are the 3 requests we have. Town of Morrisville, nothing new here. They are in phase 2 of the EIS process, and they are currently working on their draft EIS, although they are waiting for the final integrated water resources plan from the Catawba Water Management Group, so that they can use the information in this plan to inform their draft EIS. The integrated water resources plan will most likely be completed in June of 2026. And guess who's in the same place? Charlotte Water. Pretty much same exact thing. They are also waiting on the integrated water resources plan from the Catawba Water Management Group. This is information. And then the most important information today will be from the town of Fuquay-Varina. They are undergoing their new IBT certificate, and they request 6.17 MGD transfer water from the Cape Fear River Basin to the Neuse River Basin. They are in phase 2 of the IBT process, and they have completed their draft EIS and have also required the public hearings. The draft EIS is published on the State Clearinghouse with the posting period extended through Monday, February 2nd. And DWR will accept both written and oral comments through April 1st. On the slide, it shows the 3 public hearings that have been completed in December. And shout out to Chair Tweedy for being the hearing officer for all those hearings. The first one was in Fayetteville, second in Raleigh, and third in Pittsboro. I just wanted to add that there were also 2 model access trainings on December 2nd and 16th. These were virtual trainings led by Hazen and Sawyer, and the training showed participants how to sign into the model and the location in the model where to access the hydrologic runs. Public participation summary. During the 3 public hearings, there were 90 total speakers from the public. On December 4th at Fayetteville Tech, there was 51 speakers. December 9th, the ground floor hearing room, there were 27 speakers, and on December 11th in Chatham County, there were 12 speakers. Additional inputs, further written comments. I know the slide says 40 emails, but since I have created this PowerPoint, there has been an additional 125 emails. So that is a total result of 165 comments so far. People are very actively engaged. More comments will likely come in as the public comment period extends through April 1st, and written comments are accepted in the form of email and post-mail to me. Lastly, there were 26 resolutions adopted from cities, towns, counties, home builder associations, and public utilities. Below are the concerns that we've received during the public comment period thus far. First, request for extension of the public comment period. Second, request for additional public hearings in Wilmington. We've received request for the requested withdrawn water to be returned to the Cape Fear River Basin. There have been concerns regarding the equity of upstream water withdrawals from downstream sources. And we've also heard requests for consideration of alternatives, which would support long-term water balance in both basins. We've heard concerns of potential growth and development constraints within that source basin, and request for re-verification of the OASIS model and the underlying formulas used within that model. I don't know if I could have done that quicker, but my information is listed above. And the email that is listed is also where the public should send comments through April 1st. Please let me know if you have any questions.
Nice job, Ms. Holcomb. I did want to acknowledge that I know the committee members received at least one email this week requesting an additional public hearing. I just want everybody to know I'm seeing all of those requests. I'm getting them as hearing officer. I'm discussing them with the department, with council, with Chair Solomon, and we're all doing our best to follow the process that's laid out in statute. So just want everybody to understand that.
And that was going to be my question. So who makes the decision on that?
The way it's worked so far is it's been a collaborative decision.
So is it clear in the process, in the rules, that that's a decision for the department versus the EMC, or just who has that decision-making authority?
To council.
So the statute provides that the commission holds the public hearings. So I believe it is the commission's decision on those things, but it's been done in consultation since the department supports all of those public hearings. It's been done in consultation between Chair Solomon, Chair Tweedy, the department, myself, counsel for DWR, represent on IBT matters. It's been a pretty collaborative process.
So, but if this is a EMC decision to add public hearings, I assume that means it has to be at least a decision by the committee and possibly a decision by the full commission, unless it's been delegated to the committee. It can't be an individual decision by an individual EMC member, correct?
I'm not sure. I think that's probably correct.
We may just want to take a look at what that process is, because generally speaking, if it's an EMC decision, it's a corporate decision. It's not a decision by a chair or a committee chair. So we just need to make sure we understand what that process is.
I mean, the statute certainly says it's the commission that holds the public hearing.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Ms. Holcomb.
Thank you, Chair Tweedy.
Director
Very
Rogers,
good.
you don't have anything you want to say today? You have your chance tomorrow. Anyway. All right. With that, we'll adjourn this committee meeting. Thank you all.
Very good.